episode of the Barefoot Genealogist. This is episode 7 in my series called Between the Leaves. Now, in the first set of episodes, we talked to our content team all about acquisition of records and digitization and indexing and publishing, how we get the records from the archives into your computer screens. Then last week, we got to talk to Ann Mitchell, who is one of the product managers here at Ancestry, all about hints, how Ancestry delivers hints to you in your family tree. And y'all had so many questions about how else you can get access to records that I have invited Ann back this week. So let me go ahead and bring her on. Ann, there you are. Hi.
Hey, Crista.
So we have a lot of questions about search, and I understand that that is also kind of in your realm as a product manager here at Ancestry. I won't ask you to introduce yourself again because I want people to go back and watch that hint video. You gave us so much really great, juicy behind the scenes information, but there were a lot of questions about the search process. So I'm going to throw them at you fast and furious, and I have every confidence you can do this.
Do it. This will be fun.
So when you have a tree and you've gone through your hints, that doesn't find everything on Ancestry about your ancestor, because the hints are just kind of giving you those low-hanging fruit pieces of information that kind of exactly match what you have in your tree or closely match what you have in your tree. So at some point, everybody has to search the 30 billion records at Ancestry, and we make that fairly easy for people. How should they do it to start?
There are a lot of ways to search, but for me, I've got all this information in my tree and I don't like to have to type it in all over again. So if you start searching from your tree, we gather all the information you have in your tree about that person and we send it off to the search engine and it does a search for you. It's so much faster and we have all that information to match. So we're going to find you more interesting records that match those things. So the more information you have, the better off we are in giving you good info.
So why is it that if I send, if I go to a person in my tree, I click search on that page, why is that going to give me different or more results than the hint algorithms do?
Not all record collections can be hinted. They just don't have enough information that matches really well. Plus, we are very selective on what we pull as hints. And so we may be, if we don't have really good matches, say on an immigration list, we're not going to serve that up as a hint. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go search immigration lists because you may actually have something. So they'll be more likely to come up in search. In fact, when I searched for my tree, I searched for my grandfather, always lived in Virginia, born there, died there his entire life. So I do a search on him for my tree and I find an immigration record. And I'm like, this can't be, but I looked, the data matched, called my dad. Sure enough, he had gone to England to try and sell a machine that he had patented. So this is where just doing a global search, it's casting your net wide, looking at all sorts of different information, may not match as closely as we do in hints, but it's definitely worth looking at. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah. And that's you make a really good point, right? So for people who are new to family history, you don't know what you don't know. Actually, that's true of all of us, but especially for people who are new. So kind of throwing everything at the search engine and just seeing what bubbles to the top of the list might teach you some things about what kinds of records even exist. But in your example, you're a brilliant family historian, but you didn't know even to look for this particular kind of record for your grandfather.
Exactly. And I think what you said, we don't know what we don't know. And there'll be things that surprise us, which is why you have to search in all sorts of different ways, whether it be hints or global search or individual data collections, because that will help you focus and maybe find new things that you haven't seen before.
Yeah. So when you do a search from your tree, you get a search list. That search list is in what we internally here call ranked order. Mm-hmm. And, we try to deliver things that have more matching to the top of the list. We also provide what's called smart filtering. So if you've already attached a 1930 census to your tree, for example, we'll eliminate all 1930 censuses from your results. Helps to kind of keep that search results list a little bit tighter. Yes. But users can toggle back and forth between what we call this ranked search list of stuff that sometimes appears to be in random order to a specific category or a specific database. Yes. How often do you use one or the other?
Oh, I'm always going back and forth, right? I want to see that initial list, see if there's things that surprise me. Then, it's like, oh, do I have a census to go find? I'll go look there. But even if I have all the US censuses, say, I'll go look in census and voter list because there may be a voter list or a state census that I just didn't know about. I like to go through every category and just sort of see what pops up because that is where you find things that just make you go, okay, I've learned something new today.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so users can do a search from their tree. They can also just click on search all records on Ancestry and fill in data for themselves. So tell me a little bit about what's the difference between using a search form on Ancestry to look for a family history set of information versus just doing like a Google search, for example.
And I'm glad you asked this question because I think it's really important for people to understand. When you do a Google search, just a general search, they're often just searching the text inside a web page. So it's text-based. You can think of it as an OCR. It's not exactly OCR, but they're just matching words. Now, they obviously have a lot of sophisticated algorithms, but we've built a specific family history search. Now, when we index everything, think about 1950 census, the first name, the last name, the age. We have fielded search. So if your ancestor's first name was Smith or their last name, or they were from Smith County, that Smith will have a different meaning depending on what label we put with it. And that's what makes family history searching different, is because you have all these fields, which is why when you load everything in from your tree, you don't have to think about it. But when you're typing it in, you do have to think about these things. So we're taking advantage of that information we have to make your results conform more closely to what you would expect.
Okay, so fields have labels. Those labels have meaning. And so that allows Ancestry not just to search by different fields, but then also to weight information differently in the search results. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that weighting process?
Yes. And the weighting, it may be something as simple, and I use the word simple here. This stuff is so complex and so complicated. It's just so much fun to talk to the engineers who work on it because they know so many things. But, it may be the country, right? If I'm searching from the US, I would like US records to come up first, UK records. Those things are obvious. Names, we give a high weight to. Locations, we do too, because as you know, family history is really about location.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing the right location and putting that into your search form is paramount to finding who it is you're looking for. But we've also taken care, we've also taken that location thing. We've built a special filter that's very family history related. As we all know, your ancestor may have filed their probate in a different state or a different county. Excuse me. But so we created the adjacency filter. So you can choose county or adjacent county, and it will search all the surrounding counties.
So let me just kind of break this down for people about how I use that particular in the global search form. If I'm doing a search there, if I'm doing a category specific search, if I'm doing a database specific search, that location field is the one that I most heavily filter on.
Right.
On the global search form, for example, I will use the any event field.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the location field for any event, I will sometimes just put the name of the country and mark it exact.
Yep.
So if that means the only thing I'll get are records that have United States or Canada or England in the record, and it helps me constrain my search. If I know I'm looking for somebody who was born in Pennsylvania or lived in Pennsylvania, I might put the name of the state in that any location field, use the filter to mark that exact. Again, that's going to constrain my search results.
Right.
So lots of different ways, and everybody knows this, hopefully, and if you're new to family history, you might not, but names are not always spelled the same. As a matter of fact, they're probably the single piece of information that's most often wrong on the record or wrong in the transcription. And so filtering on names is so difficult. I sometimes even do searches without names at all.
Right.
Or other pieces of identifying information. Birth years are sometimes off, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. But locations are the single constraint that I can really control in my search.
And so if you can rotate around that, you have a much better chance of finding what it is you're looking for.
Right. So
Totally.
tell us a little bit about this geocentric. I can mark that place exact, but what are my other options under that search filter for
You,
place?
you can choose country, you can choose state, surrounding states, surrounding counties. I mean, and it will even go across state lines.
Yeah,
All my ancestors seem to live on state lines, and they would all run across to the state where you could get married younger first.
of
So that's
course.
where their marriage records might be. So I can choose the county they lived in, choose adjacent counties, and it will pick up their marriage record in another county if they're trying to fool me, which
There
they
you
often seem to do. So
go. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got a search from a tree. We've got crafting your own search and getting familiar with some of those filters and how they work kind of behind the scenes. And then I know you and I share a fondness for the card catalog. So on Ancestry, if y'all are new here, you don't know this, but my favorite thing is the card catalog.
mhm.
It is under the search menu on Ancestry. And let me just explain this for those of you who are new. Do you remember back in the day, you used to walk into the library, and the library is full of books, and there was this row of drawers that had cards in them. That's called a card catalog. So we just translated that to the virtual world. Essentially, when you're looking at the card catalog in the library, you're not reading the index at the back of the book to see if somebody in your family is mentioned in the book. What you're doing is you're looking in the card catalog to see where in the library to find the book.
Right.
So that's how the card catalog works on Ancestry. So sometimes I just go into the card catalog and I type in Virginia, for example, because I just want to see all the records or all the databases of records that Ancestry has for Virginia. Or I go in and I type 1950 census because I want to go straight to that census and just search that one set of records. So when you get to those databases, right, 30,000 plus databases on Ancestry, what's different about those searching that way?
There's a lot you can do with that. Like if you were talking about Virginia, you could choose a specific state, and then from the drop-down menu, choose date added, and it will show you all the latest data collections from Virginia. So that's really useful, right? And then if you click into a data collection, it's very specific. It has the forms and the fields that are specific to that data collection. So that gives you an idea not only of what's there, but what we've indexed and you can actually search on. You might want to search on a county or a certain occupation in a county because you want to find everybody who had the same, who was a farmer like your great grandfather, whatever it is you're looking for. Also, on those pages, if you scroll down, there's a description of the data collection. And you might think, well, I know everything there is to know about the 1950 census. I bet you don't. It will tell you, like on 1790, there were states that were not 1790 census, there were states that were not in there because they were destroyed. If you go down, it will tell you which county, states, whatever it is, are not available. It will tell you where the information came from, where the microfilm came from. It will give you search tips. You never know what you might learn from reading that. Other places you can go search. So it's just this like cornucopia of information about the data collection. You have to you know this, but you have to understand the data collection and how it was created and why it was created to better understand that information. So if you don't go to a card catalog and look at the description and what is in the fields that are in there, you're missing out. You're
Yeah.
paying this money and you're missing out. It is not a good idea on your part, let me tell you.
So 33,000 plus databases on Ancestry. We maintain individual search forms for every single database. That database page then also includes all this information. One of my favorite things about the database page is it also shows you if that specific set of records has images or not. If there are images, there will be a browse box. That browse box lets you just start going in and flipping through the records just like you would a book or a reel of microfilm, which can be super valuable when you're trying to look at context around who was living in the same neighborhood as your ancestor, or who was, registered for the draft at the same time, or lots of really great applications of that as well.
And when you're looking at probate records in North Carolina, we have the individual folders microfilmed, and so they're alphabetized by name. So you go find like Jacob Carpenter, and then you can look before and after. Are there relatives, or is there another file where it maybe got misspelled? Like I have ancestors that are Kaiser. It could be Kizer, Kis. So it's a great way just to go through and see what's there.
Yeah.
You and I have spent a few hours just browsing collections, I know, but it's interesting just to see what's there and what's available. And that's also very educational.
Fantastic. Well, and 15 minutes is never enough time to talk about search. But thank you again for joining me. I won't ask you our final question because you're a repeat guest, but I appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Anytime.
Well, that was what we have for you today. The point here is just that Ancestry wants to give you as many ways as possible into the historical records, because that's where the stories of your ancestors live. That's where the information that connects them to their family members is. It's how you're going to grow your family tree. So we want to thank Anne again for joining us to talk about hints last time, this time to talk about searching and all of the different ways you can search to get into the records. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another behind the scenes look at some additional things you can do on the site, some more places that your family history records are going to take you. Until next time, I'm Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.